with the issue of divorce. And so we're here to lastly talk about the specialness of God's eternal plan for marriage and His church. So in verse 1 of Matthew 19, the Bible says, when Jesus had finished saying these things, He left Galilee and went in the region of Judea to the other side of the Jordan. Large crowds followed Him, and He healed them there. Some Pharisees came to Him to test Him. They asked, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any and every reason? Haven't you read, He replied, that at the beginning the Creator made them male and female and said, for this reason a man will leave his father and his mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So they are no longer two but one. Therefore, what God has joined together, let man not separate. Why then, they asked, did Moses command that a man give his wife a certificate of divorce and send her away? Jesus replied, Moses permitted you to divorce your wives because your hearts were hard. But it was not this way from the beginning. I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife, except for marital unfaithfulness, and marries another woman, commits adultery. The disciples said to Him, if this is the situation in between a husband and wife, is it better not to marry? Jesus replied, not everyone can accept this word, but only those to whom it has been given. For some are eunuchs because they were born that way, others were made that way by men, and others have renounced marriage because of the kingdom of heaven. The one who can accept this should accept it. Okay. Jesus, it says, left Galilee and He went into the region of Judea to the other side of the Jordan. It's very interesting the Bible captures that this was the specific area where Jesus was when He talked about this topic of divorce. You say, what are you talking about? This was the specific territory of Herod Antipas. Herod was the puppet Roman ruler. What's so special about this ruler of this territory? This ruler had left his own wife. He had seduced his brother's wife, whose name Herodias, and then he married his brother's wife. If you remember what the Bible, John the Baptist came out and spoke hard and preached the word. He called this wickedness. He called this evil. And John was beheaded for the fact that he opposed Herod and what Herod had done in his own personal life for this wicked and this sordid action. Jesus was questioned by the Pharisees in the same way. That in the same way that could have the potential, first off, to alienate Jesus from His own disciples on a theological point regarding this whole divorce issue. And I'll get into this from the Old Testament. But even worse, it potentially could lead to His death if Jesus was being very outspoken about marriage and divorce. In the same way, it could sort of ruffle a number of feathers, so to speak. So Jesus was asked, why did Moses allow divorce? This was a direct reference to Deuteronomy chapter 24. Now, we won't go there. I wish we had enough time tonight to get into it. But just trust me on this. What Deuteronomy 24 was all about was not Moses permitting divorce. What Deuteronomy 24 was all about in the Old Testament was that Moses recognized that there was divorce. And because of the fact that there was divorce, he gave regulations in order to protect the interests primarily of women. Jesus was the first great liberator and protector of women. You say, what are you talking about? This is what I'm talking about.
Well,
In that culture, at that time, it was a very male-dominated culture. A man could divorce his wife for any cause, so to speak. What could that any cause be? Well, the spirit was if there was marital infidelity. But the Jews were allowing that it could be for any cause. If his wife burned his dinner. If she didn't clean up the way that he liked to be cleaned up, the house to be cleaned up. Maybe if she didn't make love to him the way that he wanted her to make love. Let's get rid of her and bring in a new model. That was the culture of what was happening. He could throw her away, bring in someone new, and then if she got another relationship, he could even reclaim her. He could reclaim her finances after he had pushed her away.
Wow.
Moses said, no. If you are going to divorce your wife, you must give her a certificate of divorce, which was a legal paper so that her legal rights could be protected. Her finances, because back in those days, it's not like you had wives going out to just get jobs. She would have to get, likely to get a loan, she would either have to prostitute herself or she'd have to, marry another man. Okay, women weren't out working and building revenue back in those days, so they were very dependent in that relation. That's just the way that it was. I'm not saying it was right, that's how it was. And so Moses was protecting the rights of women in that situation. And so that's the backdrop to what Jesus is talking about here in Matthew chapter 19. When he says in verse 3, some Pharisees came to him to test him. They asked, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any and every reason? They just have any cause. So they're trying to get into that. And there was one rule, one sect of the Jews that said, no, it could only be for marital unfaithfulness that a man could divorce his wife. In other words, his wife would have to have had cheated on him for the man to put his wife away. There was another thought that says, no, it can be for any cause. She burned your dinner. You're in control. Okay? And so there was that. And so they were trying to get Jesus into the midst of this controversy to sort of pull his disciples, one on this side and one on the other. And what did Jesus do? Haven't you read that at the beginning, the Creator made them male and female and said, for this reason, a man will leave his wife, will leave his father and mother, and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So they are no longer two but one. Therefore, what God has joined together, let man not separate. Why then, they asked, did Moses command that a man give his wife a certificate of divorce? Moses permitted you to divorce your wives because your hearts were hard. What is he talking about? You were hard-hearted in the way your ancestors dealt with their wives and putting them away for any cause. And so it was not that way at the beginning. I tell you that everyone who divorces his wife except for marital unfaithfulness and marries a woman commits adultery. So what are we talking about here? Jesus brings them back to the Garden of Eden. He says, let me explain to you what Moses was really talking about. Moses wasn't permitting divorce. He was just recognizing that there was divorce. And many of you guys were so hard-hearted that he had to say, hey, there need to be some regulations about a certificate of divorce. But Moses believed what I believe, which is what Jesus, back to the beginning. Adam and Eve. One man, one woman, one flesh, one life, till death do us part. He's bringing them back to what it's all about. And so when a man marries a wife, when a wife marries her husband, they are committing a covenant love
Come on.
one to another, a contract till death do us part. In Ecclesiastes chapter 5.
Come on.
Come on, Doug.
Over there. Some of you are familiar with where I'm going.
Come on.
Every click it shows you what
Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 4. When you make a vow to God, do not delay in fulfilling it. He has no pleasure in fools. Fulfill your vow. It is better not to vow than to make a vow and not fulfill it. Do not let your mouth lead you into sin. Do not detest the temple measure. My vow is a mistake. Why should God be angry at what you say and destroy the work of your hands? Much dreaming and many words are meaningless. Therefore, stand in awe of God. When a man and a woman stand before God, stand before men and women, and make a vow to God to love one another, to keep one another in sickness and in health, for richer, for poorer, for better or for worse, to love and to cherish, for you alone. For you alone. Until death do us part. Those are vows made before God. God says, do not be a fool. Fulfill your vow. Fulfill your vow. It is a covenant relationship between a man and a woman. Marriage is honorable. It is a holy relationship. It's to be encouraged and nurtured by Christians. It is a part of the original Edenic plan for human happiness. When we follow the plan works. When we fail to follow the plan, it is called sin.
Come on, Dad.
Yes.
So the essence of that covenanting relationship is between a man and a woman. Anything apart from that, the repudiation of one's marital vows, either by infidelity sexually or refusal to live in constant concern for one's mate, constitutes, according to Jesus, adultery. It's not just sexual sin that is committed adultery. If you read Matthew 19, Jesus said in verse 9, I tell you that anyone who divorces his